I am Kim Tracy with Maxwell James Speaker Agency in Denver. So excited to be back with Dr. T.C. North out of Lafayette, Colorado. How are you doing up there today?
I am fabulous.
Very good. Well, I didn't know if you'd say you're freezing like I am since it's like 48 degrees when we woke up today.
Oh, it's kind of nice to have it cool. I'm enjoying it.
It very much is. So today we are going to dive right into it. You are a coach who works with high performing sales executives and executives. And one of your specialties in coaching is helping, your clients release blocks to success. What is the number one block?
Yeah, and I have some amazing techniques that go, work with both the conscious mind and the subconscious mind, Kim, to do that. And everybody, the other group I work a lot with is entrepreneurs as well as salespeople and high-level executives in corporations. And there is one that is has many faces, but is pretty ubiquitous in our culture. So I got a question for you that I'm going to ask first before I answer your question, if I may.
Okay.
And being a good coach, I answer your question with a question. Um, and for all listeners, I want you to answer this question. And I think the answer is pretty obvious, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Do you ever experience anxiety or nervousness or stress or worry or frustration or all the above at some time in your life?
Absolutely. On a daily basis.
Yeah. It's pretty much the same answer that everybody's got, more or less, yeah. But Kim, what do you think is underneath all of those emotions? What other emotion is at a more primary level to those? Do you have any idea?
My guess is fear of rejection, success, failure.
Very good. I know you've listened to all my fear stuff, so I thought you might have that
I
answer.
better have that answer.
Yeah, you get an A.
Phew,
A
versus
plus,
being
yeah.
put in the clanker.
And when I started working with fears and doing recordings and writing about it, I started asking people for what fears did they have that I was working with, and to list them all. And I came up with a good group of about 33, as I recall. And then I go, what's the unifying pattern? And we broke them into the big four fears, and maybe not cover everything, but it covers up about 80-90% of the fears in one way or another, which is fear of failure, fear of success, which is a great topic someday. It's way more prevalent and way more bigger part of our lives than we realize. And fear of rejection and fear of selling. And we call those the big four fears.
Go ahead.
So of those big four fears, since we're having a conversation, do any of those, hit home for you as something that you either are currently dealing with or have dealt with?
Absolutely. One is definitely fear of success, and fear of rejection is definitely the second one.
Mm-hmm. Good. Yeah, and most people, especially entrepreneurs, have a big fear of failure, and salespeople have a big fear of failure because they feel like their family's going to end up under the bridge if they fail, and most people or many people have a fear of selling, even people who are selling.
Mm.
And there's sort of different levels of it, from the beginner, once the beginner gains some confidence, they lose that initial fear of selling, but then they may have a different level of fear of selling, at a higher level or to a different type of person or in a different situation, or selling in a team, selling to a team, which is very different. And then the other piece of selling is selling oneself.
Mm.
So even if I'm not in an entrepreneurial position or a sales position, and I'm not selling a product or service, if I'm in a corporate setting, I'm selling my ideas all day long. I'm selling them to my team. I'm selling them to my peers. I'm selling them to my boss,
Mm-hmm.
maybe selling them to a team above my boss at times. So there's always the selling of ideas, and people don't think about that as selling, but it
Mm-hmm.
actually is a selling process. And again, that is one of the big four fears, is selling product, services, or self.
That is very true. And, I hear a lot of people saying, I'm so uncomfortable doing this. And I always respond back, are you married? And if they say yes, I say, well, you just succeeded in the biggest sales job of all. I mean, you got somebody to commit their life to you.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? Yeah, love that. Great example. So I'd love to share very quickly the 6 steps I've developed over the past 30 years. And when people are in my office, I have some magic juju to make this more effective. But it's also very effective. I've used these techniques in trainings and workshops and even keynotes. And oftentimes, even in a very short amount of time, it can be very helpful to people. And today we don't have time to really process it all, but I want to give the steps and refer people to my website, tcnorth.com. Go under leadership articles. There's lots of stuff, and just list fear, and you'll run into all the articles on fear. And one of them will have the 6 steps. So the 6 steps are: one is you have to identify the fears, because we label fear with all these other adjectives and these other kinds of emotions we don't really understand as fear. But to resolve it, you have to understand that it's fear. So that's step 1. 2 is you have to embrace it. People tend to run away from it. And when you run away, you're feeding fear with fear. Mm-hmm. Think about that statement. Mm-hmm. So when you feed fear with fear, then your fear just gets bigger, uglier, stronger. And so you always want to embrace it. And the 3rd step is to disidentify with fear. So the very first step was identify the fear. The 3rd step is disidentify with the fear, because the fear is not you. Mm-hmm. You weren't born with it, other than there's a few innate fears like fear of spiders, heights, etc. Those are in our DNA. All other fears we make up or because of life experience. Nice. 4th step is identify the worst case scenario. Mm-hmm. And if you really take that to its end point, it's usually not as bad as you think. And then the 5th step is what's the probability of the worst case actually happening. And in most circumstances, it's lower than we anticipate. And with that step, if you actually identify it and it's too high for your tolerance, then you have to work on something else so that your worst case scenario is actually decreased. An example is if an entrepreneur changes her or his whole business strategy and lets go of all the clients they have to try to get this whole nother set of clients, and if it doesn't work, their company fails and they're in big trouble. Maybe in that worst case, when they look at it, the probability is 35%. Maybe that's not a good risk to take. If that risk were 2 to 5%, maybe that's a risk worth taking. So that's why that probability needs to match up with the worst case scenario. And then once you've done those 5 steps, which is focused on the fear, then when you get to the fear, so it's like, okay, got it, and now I can set it off to the side. Then the 6th step, I called it a 5-step, but it's actually 6 with this extra step, is now what do you really want that the fear was getting in the way of? Mm-hmm. And focus on what you really want, and start imagining attaining that and developing a process, an action plan on how to attain it.
Nice. So as we wrap this up, what is a tip for the viewers in terms of when they're identifying a fear, what does that actually look like to them?
Well, when you identify a fear, you're going to go through one of those emotions we talked about. So we touch in one of those emotions, and this will be the tip I'll leave with people, is, next time you feel anxious or nervous or really stressed, or, you're worried or really frustrated, take a moment and step back and go, what's really underneath that? What fear is causing that emotion? And once you identify the fear, now you've begun the process where you can actually master it. But you have to identify as the very first step.
Perfect. If you would like to bring TC North in for one of his exceptional workshops or seminars, please contact me, Kim Tracy, through Maxwell James Not Debt. And don't forget that his book, Fearless Leaders, is available to you on Amazon.com. Thank you so much for doing this with me today.
Thank you, Kim. Always enjoy it. And thank you all for watching.